Well, welcome back, folks. As you can see here, I've got the parts for the seat for the little 48N about ready to go into paint. They're all blasted multiple times. The larger parts here have been, I just wiped them down with paint thinner. I'm going to take them outside in a minute and I'll hose them down with brake cleaner in the sun, and then I'll allow that to dry and evaporate off while I go ahead and set up, mix my paint and get set up for actually spraying up. Spray out a test card first to make sure I get my pattern right. And the actual painting of these parts will probably take 2 or 3 minutes, but it's getting everything put together and set up for it that will take time. So we're going to go ahead and hose them down with brake cleaner, and then we'll get set up outside. The next time you'll see these parts will be just before I paint them. Well, there you have it. I got the first coat of primer on, and that's a relief because now I don't have to be quite as concerned about re-rusting of this bare or raw steel given the humidity we've had over the last couple of weeks. Now today's a perfect day to paint. Right now it's about 70 degrees Fahrenheit or so, very low humidity, virtually no wind. It's early morning. It's about 8:30 a.m. right now. I started on this project this morning at 6 to get everything ready. But the first coat's on. It went on fine. You saw me over here spraying out on the test card to try to get my pattern right. The one way over here on the right here, that vertical, is where I ended up. That's really the pattern I wanted. And I did not have a lot of paint waste. So what I'll do now is I'll let this dry for 24 hours. According to the manufacturer's instructions, 24 hours between coats, and that's why I needed days in a row to be able to apply this paint. The next 3 days, 4 days is supposed to be very nice. So tomorrow morning I will put another coat of primer on. Probably won't video that because it's going to look like what you just saw, but I will do a second coat of primer, let it dry 24 hours, then I'll come back and start laying down the top coat. I'll do at least 2 high gloss black top coats, maybe 3. We'll see how it goes. This is the front of my pole barn, and you can see the beam across there where I typically suspend items to paint. I've painted motorcycle tins and all kinds of parts here over the years. I don't leave that cross beam up when I'm not painting. I take it down, put it away inside, put it up when I need it. But anyway, what I wanted to share with you right above where I paint, you can see that nest, that right there, that wasp nest. They're actually not wasps. They're a type of yellow jacket. Here they're called a bald face or white-faced wasp, again, which is a misnomer. They are very aggressive They're actually kind of dangerous if you're allergic. They do not like their nest disturbed, and they will come after you with all seriousness, and you can get hurt by them. I've had a bald-faced wasp nest around my property for decades, probably going back 25 or more years. Every summer it's in a different place. Last summer it was on the back side, completely the opposite side of this building. This summer you can see it's on the west side. Probably can see them coming and going. I've coexisted with them happily for forever. I've never had a problem with them. I usually will look for their nest every spring or early summer, so I know where they're at. I think it's probably just multi-generational. In other words, this is the same lineage going back decades. The queen's produced, overwinters, comes out the next spring, starts a new nest, creates a new queen, etc., and the life cycle continues. So I've had them in trees around our property within probably a 200-foot radius of where we're standing right now. But I've learned to coexist with them. My painting here doesn't seem to bother them. I respect them, obviously. I don't want them coming after me. And they leave me alone, and I leave them alone, and I'm very discreet about what I do around them. I avoid hammering, nailing, being rough, getting too close to the nest. I do like to watch the life cycle perpetuate year after year. So today we're going to begin applying the top coat, the black, high gloss black top coat right here. Again, it's early morning, that's typically when I paint. So I've got to go ahead now and mix up the right ratios and proportion between the paint, the reducer, and then the hardener over here in a little green can. You can see my HVLP gun right here. I have some filters. I will be filtering the paint as I pour it into the cup. This is the mixing cup I'm going to use. I've referred to this before. The reducer to the paint is an 8-to-1 ratio. So I go to excuse me, I go to 8-to-1 right here. Depending on how much paint you want to mix, you can see the proportions here. So for instance, if you wanted to use this number one portion, you pour paint to that first line, the reducer using this 8-to-1 ratio to the second line, and then you have option for a third. I think in this case I'm going to start with using a volume up to number 2, so I do paint to here, reducer to here, and then halfway between these two marks will be the catalyst, because that's 16-to-1. I hope that's clear. I'm going to mix a relatively small amount of paint this first time. I don't know how this is going to cover. The primer covered really well, and I don't want to make or overproduce paint, because I don't know the pot life of this alkyd-based paint. If this was a urethane paint, for instance, a modern automotive finished urethane, pot life is typically measured in hours. That is, you have a couple of hours to use it before it starts to set up. This oil-based paint, I'm not sure. I know I've got a lot more time than, excuse me, a couple of hours, but the wild card is going to be this hardener, and I don't know the effect the hardener will have. I didn't use the hardener in the primer, so I'm going to go to number 2 right here for the paint. I would rather have to mix more than have to throw some of it away, because I don't have an overabundance of paint. There's maybe a half of a can, which should be plenty, but I just want to make sure at this point I don't run out of paint in my project. This is the air supply setup. You know, I got a gauge right at the gun. I've got 2 filters. These are new filters, by the way. I've changed these since I did the primer. Both of these are brand new. I really like this desiccant type filter right here. It changes color. These are both air and oil separators. This goes from blue to pink when it's exhausted. and I thought I'd just go ahead and change it out and put two new filters in line to make sure I can try to keep the moisture out of the air supply. So I'm going to go ahead now and mix this up. I'm not going to show you the details of mixing it. It's pretty academic. It's a good hour, hour and 15 minutes later, and you can see I've got all the parts painted their first coat. Going to do at least 2, maybe 3 before it's over. It's spread it out, of course, over a number of days. It's supposed to be a little rainy tomorrow, so I might have to skip a day or 2. An observation or 2 regarding spraying this paint. It laid out okay. I used about 2/3 of that initial paint I mixed up, and I did save the rest of it, put it in an airtight jar. I'll see how well it holds over. Not a big deal if I can't reuse it. I have, I think, plenty of paint to finish the project. I did have to bump my air pressure a little bit higher than I normally would, particularly for a urethane paint, which is quite thin and watery. This is a little thicker, being an oil-based or alkyd-based paint. So that was an observation. I might go a little heavier on the reducer this next mix. It's just a touch more reducer, thin the paint a little bit more. It covered fine. I didn't have any problem with coverage. So thinning the paint a little bit, I'm not too concerned in terms of coverage. So this will now sit at least 24 hours. Again, as I just said, if We have rain tomorrow. I might have to skip a day or two or however many days of rain. We really do need the rain, so I'm not complaining. I would like to have a good day soaker because it's getting pretty dry, but it might delay the project a bit if I can't paint. I'll leave these outside today. It's supposed to be quiet today, so I'm not too concerned about wind. And I'll bring them in later on this afternoon. And here we have the final coat, the third coat of the high gloss black paint on the seat parts. You can see them all lined up. That's going to be it in terms of painting. I'm not going to put another coat on. I want to share with you a couple of points here, some experiences I've had while I was painting these parts. The primer coat went on fine. I had no problem getting the two primer coats to lay down. I ran around 25 psi, 1.4 tip in the HVLP gun, and for those of you that paint with HVLP, you'll know what or understand what that means. Jonah, I'm thinking of you here. And it laid out fine. When I shifted to the black, the color, first coat went on pretty good. A little bit of a trouble getting it to spray out properly, so I fiddled with the air pressure. I ended up around I think 30 psi, and I wasn't totally happy with it, so I scuff sand between coats, let it dry for 24 hours, scuff sanded between coats, and the second coat didn't go on good at all. And I'm not sure why. Environmentally, in terms of the environment itself, it might have been a little warmer, a little more humid. Not a lot, but it might have been enough to affect the paint. But I had some serious problems with orange peel, especially on the pan. Unfortunately, it was the pan, wouldn't you know it. The seat pan itself, I had some orange peel in particular. Again, I let it dry 24 hours. I scuff sanded it, and I decided to thin the paint a little bit more than the 8:1 that was called for in the can. Now remember, this paint is fairly old. In fact, it's old for paint. It's 6 years old. It's been well preserved. It's never been frozen. Kept it in a heated space. I thinned it initially 8:1. First coat worked fine, second coat not good at all. So the third coat I went 6:1, so I went a little heavier on the reducer to thin it up, and it sprayed out very good on the card, and it sprayed out really fine here. So additional thinning was necessary to really get it to lay down the way I wanted it to. Now today it's very low humidity, and it's cool. It's around 70, again around 70 degrees Fahrenheit. When I painted the second coat, it was a little warmer. It was around 75, 78 degrees Fahrenheit, a little higher humidity. So that probably was a factor. It may have been especially the humidity in terms of the orange peel. But I think it was a combination of the age of the paint. It is an alkyd oil-based paint, and getting the proper thinning to get it to spray out the way I wanted it to. I started with the 1.4 nozzle. Again, for those of you that use HVLP spray equipment, you know what that means. I started the 1.4 nozzle and needle. I went up, experimented with 1.8, which was nozzle and needle, which was way too heavy, laid on way too much paint. So I dropped back to 1.4. That's what I settled on here. So I don't think the size of the nozzle was the issue. I think it was a combination of the age of the paint and thinning. Probably because of the age of the paint, it required additional thinning from what I remember the last time I used it, which was a few years ago now. And I don't remember having to thin it more than, at that time, 8:1. But this time I did, and it laid out pretty good. It's not perfect. Still have a little visible orange peel on the seat pan in particular, not so much on the other parts, but I'm not going to worry about it anymore. It is, after all, a tractor seat. Now, if I was going to restore this project, do a complete restore, I wouldn't use an Alkyd oil-based paint anyway. I would use urethane, which I have actually more experience, quite a bit more experience spraying through HVLP equipment than Alkyd or oil-based paint. So I wouldn't even use this type of paint. I'd use a high-quality automotive-style urethane, and I don't think I'd have any issues with it at all. But I used what I had. I didn't want to go out and buy more paint, and the seat pan itself here is going to be ultimately covered with one of those pads, because one of the things I discovered when I mowed with the tractor here at this point is about 5-6 weeks ago, that pan gets pretty hard after an hour and a half on that metal pan bouncing along. So I don't remember that being an issue for me when I had my 9N and my Ford 860 would had the same pan. I don't remember that bothering my tailbone or my back, but this does. But of course, I'm 25 to 30 years older now than I was then also. So I am going to put a pad on that that seat eventually. This is the last time you're going to see these parts for a while. I'm going to let them just completely dry for probably a couple of weeks. I have to find a place to put them where they're out of the way. I'll let them dry for at least 24 hours before I really do much with them. Then I'll probably move them into the pole barn in the background and just tuck them away in a corner somewhere for a couple of weeks. Move on to some other things with the tractor. I don't need these parts in the near term anyway. It'll be a couple of months before I probably mow again, so let them dry. In the meantime, I can get a pad, and we'll come back somewhere along the way and I'll show you the finished unit. That's going to be it for this video today, folks. Any issues, questions, thoughts, drop me a note. And in particular, I'd be very interested in hearing from people like Jono and others that have experience spraying with an HVLP gun equipment, particularly if you sprayed oil-based paints or Alkyds. Be very curious what your thoughts might be on what I've just shared with you and my experiences. But in the meantime, thanks for watching.